That's unfair on both of you. Somebody's going to get hurt. Somebody's going to be abused, intentionally or unintentionally, because that's not the responsibility of another human being. That's God's responsibility. But if you come into a relationship expecting the other person to heal you, it can even bring resentment, anger, and any other feeling depending on how your makeup is. I later learned that was my reason that I learned. But my ex-husband's reason when I asked him for us drifting apart, because I was trying to understand, because for me, I'm the kind of person that if I don't understand something, I want to go and find out what in the world is going on, what's happening here, and why is it happening. So I asked him. And we had been living apart for a couple of years at that time. And during that time that we were separated, I was still praying for reconciliation. And I remember some people actually letting me know that that's not going to, reconciliation is not going to happen. But I was just waiting to hear and confirmation that was not going to happen. And one day I remember I was at work and I called him to just, what's going on? And what he told me was that there was not going to be anything, because to him, I was like a sister and nothing else. That crushed me to the core. And I remember just, sitting down in the hallway at work and went to my apartment, and I literally locked myself in and locked the world out. Those who know me know that I'm kind of an expert at isolating myself, and I did. And I questioned God and even his existence. If you're good, then how could you let this happen? How could I have been living with this person as a wife and he thought I was his sister? And I began to reflect on my life. I was thinking, okay, I questioned all relationships. I'm like, okay, I must be missing something. If I could live with somebody thinking one way, but to them it was something else. How about this friendship? How about this relationship, that relationship? Is it what I think it is? I began to doubt myself in all aspects of my life and thinking something must be wrong with me. And even up today, I don't wallow in, but I wonder, did he marry me because he felt pity and had seen something in me that I didn't see and he wanted to save me? But that's a responsibility that only belongs to God. And if that's the reason, that's why it didn't work. We can want to save someone, but that's a tall order. That's a tall order. We have to let God do what he does, save people. We can only be there for them. And thankfully, I could work from home. And while I locked myself up, I remember a friend of mine who knocked on the door, and I was ignoring them, and they threatened to call the police on me because it was high time that I get out of there, wash my face, and rejoin the world of the living. And she had made an appointment for me with a Christian counselor who I started seeing for a while. And after a few sessions with the counselor, you know how you almost feel like a veil has been lifted off of your eyes. You start to see things much, much, much clearer. And those sessions helped me to become brave enough to begin to confront what I'd been running away from for a while. Like we learned this morning that it's very hard, to face some difficulties, some situations, or some experiences. But it helped me to be brave enough. And it led me to a point where I recognized that the unresolved trauma, particularly from my childhood, had cast a long long shadow and shaped my identity, shaped the way I presented myself in the world, in all aspects of the world, even shaped my the way that my worldview shaped me, thinking that going into a marriage, I've got to figure it out and this is what's going to look like. That was a lie from the devil. But that's who I was. And living with unresolved trauma, that unresolved trauma, it distorted the lens through which I saw the world. I saw other people, and I even presented myself in different relationships. But through acknowledging and confronting those traumas and the effect of it, for me it was almost like the beginning of a rebirth. A rebirth of who I was and my identity, who Christ was to me and who I was to him. But it was a crisis that festered for a while. But that crisis was two things: the worst thing that ever happened to me, but also the best thing that ever happened to me. The worst because I became even more angry with God, thinking, God, what's up? Are you even there? This again? But it was the best thing that happened to me, because then it ushered me in a direction that gave opportunity for me to start healing. And while I was going through my sessions, I started journaling as part of the therapy. And through that, I then realized that I thought I was in control of my life. I don't know if somebody can relate to that. I thought I was in control of my life. I had a job, I had a son, I had an apartment. I knew what I was going to do next and all that. I thought I was in control. But then I began to realize, sister, you know nothing, and you're not in control. And I realized that I had to deal with the unresolved trauma, because otherwise it was going to literally destroy me. And the fact that I had a chronic illness that I was diagnosed in 1992 that I was trying to ignore, that helped me to realize that you can't run away from them. You get to deal with it and learn to live with it in a positive way, and you will be okay. So that was the best part of that situation. And I remember one day when I was feeling, you know how you feel like, yes, this is going well. But one day I was feeling some kind of way about the therapy and all these things coming. And I had a conversation with God, maybe actually more like me telling God what was going to happen next, because I was in control. Then I knew that I was not in control, but this situation is a little too hard, so I need to take back my control. So God, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to call my counselor tomorrow, and I don't think I need to go through with the counseling. I'll go back to my comfort zone and take back my control of my life, so I don't have to feel all this struggle, even though I'd been brave enough at one point. Because those who have been through counseling, you know that some counseling will make things bubble up that you did not want to deal with, and it's not an easy process, but it's necessary. And sometimes we run away from it, but we gotta run back to it. Because that pain, it is necessary. It is necessary. Because those who work out, if you're working out to build the muscle, some muscle fibers have to break, literally break, for you to become stronger. If you have a garden, those who have gardens, if you want many tomatoes, you gotta prune some of those branches off for you to have a real good harvest at the end of the day. It's just like our spiritual growth. just like our healing, just like when you're raising your children, there are some things that have to die, literally, to be pruned off. So the pain that you experience through counseling, it is necessary because it's pruning off what needs to be pruned and putting things in perspective. But I did what I usually do when I decide that I'm going to take back my control. So I thought, I used to love running. Yeah, I don't look like it now because I don't run anymore, but I used to run a lot, run marathons and all that. So the decision has been made. I have informed God what was going to happen. And tomorrow I'm going to call the council and tell them I'm done. So it's good. So I put on my running shoes and I went for a run. And as I was running in my neighborhood, I remember it was around 2 p.m. in the afternoon. And I was saying to myself, I'm glad I don't have to go through that. Yes. And as soon as I said that, it was almost like I don't know if it was an audible voice or an impression that says, I got it. I got you. And I looked around, I'm like, okay. And I kept saying the same thing, and a vision of the first traumatic event from my childhood came to my remembrance. And the voice or the impression, I honestly can't tell whether it was an audible voice, but it felt like it was an audible voice, saying, I had you in the palm of my hand then. And I was like, okay. And I kept running, and 2 more visions of other traumatic events in my childhood came, and the voice said, even then, I had you in the palm of my hand. Even then, even then, even then. And for a moment, I was very confused. I'm like, God, I told you I'm in control. Now what is this? But I felt this overwhelming sense of peace, joy, and almost like a weight was lifted off my shoulder. And I just sat on the side of the road, and I just knew that God was there. And I sat there for a while. Needless to say, I went back. I didn't cancel my appointment with my counselor, and I continued to write. It was not easy. It's still not easy. There are times where I just want to give up. But the period of time where I feel like I can't do it and I come back are getting shorter and shorter because God is working with me and teaching me every single day. Because with the healing process, it's a journey. It's a process. And you go from one depth of understanding to the next, to the next. Sometimes people wonder, why am I feeling this way about this situation? I thought I had dealt with it before. Yes, you dealt with it at this level. But now we're going deeper. That's why it comes up. That's why you're being triggered. It's difficult, but it's necessary. And another aspect of not having dealt with my childhood trauma is that I presented myself to the world with anger, with a lot of resentment, especially towards men. And I remember when my son was very young, he was very protective of me. If a man, whether we're at home or anywhere, was trying to get close to me, he would come and be protective. And it was very cute. It was very endearing. But then afterwards, I thought, where did he learn to do that? He's only 8, 9 years old. He took those lessons right out of my playbook because of how I treated other people. That's what he was learning from. So he was doing what I was doing, saying what I was saying. And with children, sometimes we think that we have to tell them what to do so they can learn. Children learn deeper things by watching you do what you do, by hearing you say what you say to other people in different situations. And they absorb those feelings, your feelings, like a sponge. That's what shaped who they become. And it affected my son until his adulthood. But by the grace of God, he is now a man of God who just married and they're serving God together. At one point, I was introduced to a church. Actually, the counselor introduced me to a church because I had many questions after that encounter on the roadside. Wondering, okay, God, if you were there, then why? If you're saying you were there, then why did this happen? Why did that happen? And she sent me to this church where I met this woman who was no nonsense about God. But she introduced me to God as Abba Father. A concept that I did not really understand. And what surprised me most was that he actually wanted a relationship with me because at one point God was out there, not really close to me. To cut a long story short, one of the days that I was working from home, I remember how you are just listening to the radio and you are working. And I got up to go and pay the water bill. And this song came on the radio by Hillsong. Some of the lyrics say, I surrender. Find me here, Lord. I am desperate. I know you hear my cry. I want to know you more. Lord, have your way in me. I had heard that song many times, but on that day, I just dropped down on the bathroom floor and I just cried out. I remember the lady who lived next door knocked on the door, but I couldn't even get up to go and tell her, I'm okay, it's just this God thing going on here. And I was lying on that bathroom floor for what seemed like a very long time. Two things were happening. I just wanted to stay in that place that felt so peaceful and realizing that, if I surrender, he'll help me. And I fell asleep, probably also from exhaustion from crying so much. And I wanted just to stay in his presence. I think this is the day that I first began to understand what it means and experience being in God's presence. Because there's so much peace, and just joy that you can't even understand. Why am I feeling this joy? And it looks like I'm a mess, but it's just that joy. That's the first day that I really experienced that. And I've continued to hunger for it and to want more experiences like that. Let's get one point clear also. That cry was not like a pretty cry to say, oh, God, help me. It was like a really ugly cry and really surrendering to the God. If you don't fix if you don't fix me, if you don't help me, I'm done. So God help me, God help me. And I began to embrace even the pain of the healing process. Slowly but surely, I began to understand what that lady from that church was trying to teach me about prayer. That prayer is not only sporadic SOS messages to God when I'm in a tight spot. Prayer is not me persuading God to do what I want him to do. And it's not an obligation or a chore that I need or have to do, or me inviting God to come and do what I want him to do. Prayer is not like a spiritual ATM where you go and, when you want something or anything like that. To understand what prayer is, we have to go to the source, like one of the scriptures that we read, to look to Jesus, because he's our example. That's why he came to the world, to come and teach us about all these things of how we should live. What did Jesus say about prayer? Pray without ceasing. And if you read the other scripture of how to pray, you'll be able to understand that. And this morning, we were taught a lot of information about how even to do that. How even to do that. And now my definition of prayer is, it is not an activity. It is a way of life or a lifestyle. It is a conduit or a path that helps me to align my heart and my mind with God as closely to Him, so that my earthly perspective about everything, whether it's marriage, work, walk, going to the hospital, or even fellowshipping with others, all those plans aligns with who He is and who I am as He created me. And it transforms you, because you begin to see yourself. The picture in the mirror begins to change because you see who God is and who God created you. So that's what prayer for me is. Because I never liked to see the person in the mirror. No. Because for years I wore one color, black, because that's who I saw myself as. But the foundation of prayer is love, God's love. That's the foundation. And the goal of prayer is God. That's the goal of prayer. For you to meet who He is. We were taught this morning about the different names of God. For me, God is Abba Father. For me, God is El Roy, because He sees me. And it's very personal. And your posture has to be just hungering for Him. I've got to conclude, I'm told. So I'm going to go to the end. Whatever your story is, or wherever you find yourself today, whatever brought you here today, just know that you have a community of sisters here to support you, to walk with you, whether it's illness, whether you have some unresolved issues or traumas that you are dealing with, or trying to help somebody to deal with it. Just feel free to reach out. Like they said, we have a prayer team. And can I have 5 minutes? No? Okay. They said no. Okay. But I just want to invite you to know that we have the prayer room, as they said. And you can reach any of us if you need prayer. And we can agree with you and walk with you and pray with you.